As we prepare to hear the word of the Lord read by our sister Audrey, I wanted to just come to the Lord together and ask him, because remember, we're always dependent on Father, always, for all good things. We're going to ask him to bless the reading of the word, our time meditating on the word. And this word is going to be from Psalm 18, so if you would like, please turn there ahead of her reading it, if you'd like to follow in your hard copy Bibles. But please listen intently to the visuals painted for us by David's words, because all that you're about to hear from David is going to tie directly to what our Lord Jesus taught us to pray. At the very end of his prayer, as we round out our look at the Lord's Prayer, listen closely to the power of the description we hear. But before we hear it, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Lord, as those who need your word to live, we live by every word that comes from the mouth of our God. And I pray that this word we're about to hear will build such confidence in us of your loving attention, of your power to rescue your people from the enemy, that before we even speak of it, we'll have already been blessed by it. And I ask this, Lord, knowing that you can, that you're willing for those who love the truth. And so we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's prepare to hear the word together.
This is Psalm 18, verses 1 through 19. I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and I have been saved from my enemies. The cords of death entangled me, the torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called to the Lord. I cried to my God for help. From his temple, he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. The earth trembled and quaked, and the mountains and the foundations of the mountains shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced with hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. With great bolts of lightning, he routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare at your rebuke, Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils. He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me.
I just switched out for a new battery, and it was a dead one. That was awesome. Okay. Don't let that distract us. Here we go. So as you're hearing these words of David, are you able to picture what's going on? He's a poet, so I hope his poetry helped you. When you hear the description of God David gives, is it one that is soft and cuddly? Every image he gives you is actually quite terrifying, isn't it? For whom? For David, who's in the middle of being entangled by death, the cords surrounding him. You get the image that he feels like he's being pulled under, because this enemy that's against him, that surrounds him, is so overwhelmingly powerful. What was David's only resort? What's the only thing David could do? He said, I cried out to my God. And where was his God when he cried out? Do you remember what he said? He heard me from where? From his temple. And we don't mean the physical temple. There was no physical temple yet. He was speaking of his heavenly throne, which is actually a temple. Now, as you go forward, and I hope you'll revisit that psalm today or soon, because as you go forward and listen to his description of God, it actually is quite terrifying, not for David, but for whom? For his enemy. Because the reason God rouses himself from his throne, the reason he's coming in fierce anger, the reason he's coming in the darkness of the clouds with lightning flashing from his glorious presence is because his boy is in trouble. And no one dares mess with his servant David. You see why that is the most wonderful, brilliant picture of God for a person in trouble, a person surrounded by an enemy they cannot defeat themselves. Anybody seen the movie Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe? Chronicles of Narnia? If not, come on, y'all, let's fix that. Anyway, not to give any spoilers, but there's this climactic battle scene. As you might expect in a story this epic, there's this climactic battle scene between the forces of good, the forces of evil, and the leader of the forces of good, his name is Aslan. Guess who he represents in the parable of this story? He's the Jesus. I love it. Such a great picture of Jesus. Anyways, he's nowhere to be found as the battle is raging. His people are fighting the forces of evil, and he's not around. And it's not looking good. The battle's turning against the good. Looks like wickedness may prevail. But Aslan's been busy, you see. And what's he been up to? He's not in the fight. Where is he? What he's been doing is rescuing those who'd been turned into statues. That's weird. Watch the movie, you'll understand. And as he breathes his breath of life on them, they come to life. And now when he comes to the battle, guess who's coming with him? A whole other army. The reinforcements are here. And here's the picture I wanted to bring out here. It goes with Psalm 18. How does Aslan announce that he's here to fight? If you see the movie, do you remember what he did? What would a lion do to announce his presence? He roared with such a powerful roar that everyone, including the queen, who was kind of the crazy leader of the evil ones, everyone stops mid-swing in the fight, and they all look with terror that way. And you can see like this powerful queen with, wicked, this force of army behind her. You see in her face the dread because she knows exactly who roared, and she knows exactly what that means. This battle is over because Aslan's here. Now, for the wicked ones, that roar means certain doom, but what does it mean for those fighting with Aslan? What does it mean to hear that roar? Oh, man, that means that this thing just turned. We are going to win because he just showed up. Do you not see the parallels here? C.S. Lewis, who wrote this, he knew the scriptures. He knew the story of salvation, that our king, when he shows up, he turns the tide. He can win. Now, why all this? Because we're going back to the Lord's Prayer. And I want to look at the final petition of our Master with you. Because remember, always please, whenever you say these words, whenever you think on these words, remember this. Jesus, our Master, is not just teaching us what to say. What he's really teaching us is who to be. Amen? Because what you say in prayer is flowing from who you are. Do you believe that? What do you call it if you speak to someone in a way that you don't really mean? Well, the harsh word would be lying, but the more religious word would be hypocrisy. Isn't that true? Hypocrisy is acting. I'm saying things that I should say, whether I mean it or not. But no, the disciple of Jesus is always called to sincere worship. Because remember what our Master said. He's looking for worshipers who worship in what? in spirit and truth. So, if Jesus tells us to say these words, do you honestly think he's saying, now get the script right? Yeah, right? To get the script right, and it'll be fine. No. What he's saying is, when I teach you to say these things, I'm telling you who you are supposed to be so that when you say it, you mean it with all your heart. So, quickly to review, what kind of people ought we to be? First of all, we're the kind of people who understand who God is in our lives. He is Father. And oh my gosh, I just want to talk about that again because that's so awesome. And we're also the kind of people who know something about Father, that He lives where? In the heavens. He fills this universe. And you say, yeah, He lives in heaven. Correct. He does sit on His throne at the center of the universe in His city called heaven. But is that the only place He is? You see why that the heavens is such a powerful phrase there? Because it means He's not just there. He's filling His cosmos with His presence. And here's what that also means. If the kingdom of God is here, where else is He? He's not just filling the skies, filling the outer space, filling heaven itself. He is actually invading earth with His presence, which is why we can call to Him. More than that, what does he say next? We are the kind of people who so honor God that we want His name to be hallowed in our lives and in the world. Remember, this is a mission statement. Do you remember that? We talked about this a while back. So just to remind you, God's on a mission to make sure His name is hallowed and revered by all nations. That's an actual mission He has. And so when we pray this, we're saying, I'm on board with your mission. I want your name hallowed too, Father. What else? We're the kind of people who want His kingdom to come. Anybody just desperate for that? Anybody? Come on. If we're not, who's going to be? If we're not desperate for God's rule and reign to take root in this world, who's going to want it? Right? So we've got to be the kind of people that when we say these words, this is a desperate cry of our heart. Oh, Father, there is no other kingdom that we want to see. Your kingdom come. Whose will? We're the kind of people who want whose will to be done. Father's will. Man, we live in a world with 1 billion different wills, actually 7 or 8 billion different wills in constant motion, some of them colliding, some of them aligning, but wills all around us. And one of the most prominent in my life is my own. Anybody with me? But we as disciples, we declare something. Father, we want your will done. Where? Here. In this earth. This old thing? Yes. Father, don't wait until the new heavens and the new earth. Bring it to this earth just like you have it in heaven itself. We're the kind of people who rely on Father for everything, our daily bread. He is provider to us, and we get that. We're coming to Him. We're the kind of people who know we have sinned. Against whom? God. Yes. Each other. Yes. We get that. We're the kind of people who know that, but we're this kind of people. We ask Him to release us from our debt for that. But don't forget. Even as we're the kind of people who come to Him humbly for release from our debts to Him, we are also doing what at the same time? We are the kind of people who release others from their debts. Amen? Because Jesus made it clear as crystal, can't even ignore it. If we aren't the kind of people who will release others from their debts, we are not the kind of people who will be released from ours, right? Oh gosh. And now, this is heavy already, I haven't even started. And then finally he says, lead us not into temptation. We are the kind of people who are aware of our own frailty, so we ask God, will you make sure that you don't lead us anywhere where we might dishonor your name? If we fail in the face of the test, right? So just a quick review. I just want to talk about all those things again. It's so great. But here, we need to land the plane where Jesus did. Now, before I move on to this statement, I'm claiming something that actually goes counter to what we have been praying every day or every week. Typically, when we say the Lord's Prayer together, how do we end it? For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And yet, I stand here before you today and claim that what Jesus ended His prayer was with this line, deliver us from the evil one. So, you might think to yourself, either this guy's nuts, well, my Bible's wrong. And it's probably more likely this guy's nuts, right? Okay, and I sympathize with your sentiment. But if you were to look at the more recent translations, you'll find they leave that last line out. Now, they'll tell you on the bottom of your page that there are manuscripts with it in there. But the reason that there's confidence that that last line was not originally what Jesus said is our oldest manuscripts, of the New Testament, our oldest copies of what we have, just generally don't have it in there. So there's a hint there that somebody, some scribe, some copyist along the way, put those words in there. Are they bad words to put in there? I love them. I think is that not a great ending, right? That's no problem. But if we want as disciples of Jesus to know what did Jesus say, it's pretty clear consensus to all the people who've studied this kind of stuff intently. This is where Jesus ends his prayer. So here's where we're going to end the prayer. But oh my, what a place to end it. What a place for Jesus, our Master, to tell us to conclude our thoughts when calling on Father for these things. And I'm tempted to take several weeks to unpack this because there's so much. But what I'm going to try to do in the time we have is show us why what we are told to pray by our Master says something about who we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to view this world and our place in it. All right? So let's strap in. Okay. Now, when Jesus says to pray, Father in the heavens, deliver us from evil. That's what we say each week. That's what's in the older translations. Notice again, there's a change here. And I don't do this just to mess with people. I want to make sure we're clear on what Jesus said. When we read the documents, okay, the copies that we have of what Jesus said, what he actually said was, deliver us from the evil. It's kind of a strange thing. This is kind of unclear what that means. So, we take, in the older translations, they just took out the. Deliver us from evil. That makes more sense, right? Because we get evil as a big, bad concept. We get that. But when you say deliver us from the evil, you're really specifying now, what evil are you talking about? What's the evil that Jesus has in mind? But take this one step further. The word evil there is actually not, and I'm going to get a little English grammar. Hope you don't mind. But that's what we're dealing with, right? English. So we want to understand Jesus in our language. In our language, evil, when you just see that word by itself, it could either be describing something or it could be a thing. Is that not right? The forces of good and evil. That's a noun. Evil is a thing. Evil is a reality, yeah? Or you could say that is an evil villain, right? You're describing with that word. Well, in this sentence of Jesus, in the Greek language, you can tell which one it is, describing or it's a noun. But in English, we can't tell. So this is why I want to talk to you about it, just in case you haven't seen this before. The word Jesus used for evil there is actually a describing word. That's why the older translations, it's not quite right. If you say, deliver us from evil, you're saying, Father, deliver me from the thing, that evil, right? But what Jesus said is, deliver me from the evil something. But here's the trick. He never said what the something was. He leaves the hanging adjective. And that actually happens, I have the list of them in my notebook here. Several times in the Scriptures, it just leaves it at the evil. And you, the hearer or the reader, you're left to fill in the blank. The evil what? So, that's why in the newer translations, what do they put in there? Something really vague, okay? It's the best we can do. Our two options are, deliver us from the evil thing or deliver us from the evil person. Now, you as a disciple, you have to think, just like every translator has to think, would Jesus be telling us to ask, Father, deliver us from the evil thing or deliver us from the evil person? Which makes more sense? Knowing the whole story, it's a person. It's a person. The evil one. That's why in the newer translations you're going to see it that way. I just wanted to cover that because I don't want there to be confusion. My translation looks different from that translation. What does it mean? This is really what Jesus said. Deliver us from the evil, and we're going to fill in that blank because it's the one that makes the most sense. Deliver us from the evil one. Now that changes the dynamic. If you're used to thinking of this as deliver us from evil, evil is such a vague, big thing, right? And you could be meaning all kinds of things when you say that. But now, if as disciples of Jesus, if we can track Jesus' logic, not our own, Not what we're used to, what we like, but what Jesus himself is getting at. Oh man, this opens up a whole world to us in prayer. I'm telling you, if you've ever wondered, how could I pray for a long time? I speak for 2 minutes to God. I'm out of stuff to say. That's why we're looking at this prayer so carefully. Your life as a disciple is going to explode in maturity and joy when you can pray, not just a long time, but pray with meaning. And everything Jesus has told us, I hope you're seeing this as we unpack it. There's so much to it, right? Every part of his telling us how to pray is so full of things we can constantly call on God about. So, you're a disciple. You're living in central Pennsylvania in the year 2017. And I will not speak for everybody, but in general, I hope you'll allow me to say this, we live in relative peace. We live in relative safety. Will you go with me on that? Not to say everything's hunky-dory, not to say there's no dangers anywhere, but relative. Compared to most of our world, wow, are we blessed. And I don't even know if it's possible for us to know how well we're blessed because we've been in it for so long. You know what I'm saying? Like if you came from a war-torn area like Syria, if you're a refugee fleeing from the dangers of a crazy man in charge, people getting gassed to death by their own government, like if you lived there, you would come here and be like, whoa, do you know what you have here? But for us, it's like every day, right? Well, this is the danger of that. Now, I love that we are safe. I love that we have peace. But here's as disciples, here's our danger. We take that physical, political, other kind of peace and safety, and we therefore assume that there is no danger, real, present, imminent danger at all. And one thing Jesus would indicate to us is that we actually, every disciple of Jesus is in real and present danger. Real and present. Now, some of you sitting here like, dude, I know that. Others of us would be like, what? Like as a concept, yeah, fine, maybe. But in reality, really? I'm in real and present danger. What I want to do this morning is try to show you from the Word of God how true this is because, follow me here, if you aren't aware of your being in real and present danger from the evil one, will you honestly pray that Father deliver you? Right? Jesus said, pray that the Father deliver you. But if you never feel like you're in danger, how often are you going to ask to be delivered? Anybody call the cops this week to help you fight off a bad guy? Anybody? I didn't. I don't think I've done that once, actually. I called the police because there was somebody that ran through our property in California, and it freaked us out. And we heard that there were cop cars, so we knew he was being chased. And he ran right through, and we didn't know where he ended up. So, where is he? And it's dark. It was nighttime. Is he in our backyard? Is he trying to is freaking us out? And I'm upstairs. And I'm not cowering like I had my bat in my room. So I get my bat and I'm going downstairs kind of, y'all stay up there. I'll check it out. But before, Tom, you'll appreciate this. Before you go down with your bat, who should you call? People with more than a bat and people with a badge. Am I right? Okay? Now, why have I not called the police, the state troopers, in the last year and a half I've been here? I have never sensed myself or my family in real imminent danger from anyone that the police could help with. That's why I don't call for deliverance. I don't sense any reason to. Well, here's the problem. If you are not aware of the spiritual reality that is real danger to you, you won't call on Father. And you can't do what your master said to do. You just won't. Because you couldn't do it honestly. So I want to help you obey Jesus' teaching here by helping anyone who isn't seeing it to see how real danger is all the time threatening his people. Okay? That's our mission today. To start, I want to let Peter, the apostle of Jesus, speak. Peter is writing to a whole bunch of different Christians in a whole bunch of different areas. And here, he wasn't being specific to one group who had certain issues. Every Christian he was writing to, in all their different situations, he said the same thing to them. He said, be alert and of sober mind, which means clear thinking, right? He's not talking about alcohol or no alcohol. He's talking about clear thinking. He said, be alert and of sober mind. Why? What do you picture when you hear the word alert? I always picture my dog Sam. I really do, because she's a dog. She can hear better, smell better, all this stuff, right? So we're sitting around, we're talking, we're watching TV, having dinner, if something happens that we don't know about, but we see our dog like this. You have dogs? You ever see that? It's not a squirrel, okay? So why? What just led that dog who has that super hearing and all that other stuff? She just went, She's alert now. And if you've met our dog, she's perfectly friendly. But when she meets strangers, you know what happens on her back? Well, they have, she looked like she's going to hurt some folks because she's just so alert. She's like, danger, danger. Okay, don't be a dog, but think on that. This is the alertness that Peter's talking about. What? Shh. Right? You should mute the television. This just happened last night. Christina's like, did you hear that? What? Did you? Shh. Stop talking or you won't hear it. Shh. That. I don't hear it. She was alert. I wasn't. Whatever. Just doing my thing. But see, this is what he's saying. Be alert, because here's the thing. If you're alert, it means you know that something's amiss, something's about that is a danger. Be alert and of sober mind. Why? Because you know something, right? Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a house cat, meerkat, like what? A roaring lion, looking for what? Someone to devour. This is no joke. Peter said this to every Christian within reach of his letter. Everybody everywhere. He wasn't like, well, I know your church is having all kinds of trouble, so look out for the enemy. He's like, everywhere you are, no matter your situation, know this is happening. See, and if we as disciples are so comfortable, so safe, and so secure that we don't know that there's a lion, roaring lion, looking to devour some folks, we will be very content to be very unalert and foggy-minded. You're allowed to be foggy-minded when nothing's endangering you. You're allowed to do that. So let me ask you this. If you have people in the military, which thank God for them, ask God to bless and protect them, honor them all the time, and especially in Memorial Day, stuff like that coming up. But listen, if you have a military who's in a battle zone, and they are looking at their devices, you with me? Nodding off, watching Netflix, does this concern you? Why? Because there are bullets flying, there are explosions around you. Like, this is the moment to be on your game. However, on a lazy Sunday afternoon, your rest day, birds are chirping, no danger in sight. Are you allowed to get a little groggy and take your nap? I hope so. That's my ritual. But if we're groggy in the battle zone, we're dead. Do you see this? Like, this is an intense message today, but that's the point. It's intense. Well, the reality we live in every day as disciples of Jesus is intense. And so if we walk along, and it's very tempting to say, hey, Jesus is in charge, doot-de-doo. Hey, happy-go-lucky, Jesus is alive. Yeah, amen. We're going to get to why that's such great news, but this is one reason that's great news. Left on our own, if he weren't alive, if he weren't in charge, guess what? You're lion meat. You're a walking meal, okay? And this is not about scaring anybody. This is about reality. This is about wake up to what's happening in our everyday life. And you're like, Ryan, okay, it's in the Bible, it must be true, but what does that even mean? I don't notice this. I don't notice a lion roaring, you know. Is this one of those Christian, you just take it by faith and don't ask any questions kind of thing? No. I want to look at this with you because this is so important for us. One of the reasons we get, and forgive the expression, it's the cliche, fat, dumb, and happy. You know, I'm going with that. I don't mean to insult anybody. But the reason that we get in that mindset a lot of times is we have no idea what's really raging around us. We're in this little bubble. Because we think the gospel means that everything's fine. Okay, most of us have figured that that's not true. But some of us, we can get there, you know. A family's good, work's good, church life is good. It's all good. Meanwhile, in the spiritual realm, bombs, bullets, tanks, you know, the spiritual warfare is still raging. So I just wanted to look at this list with you so that you can understand, as a part of God's movement in our world, there is a real enemy, and he is really active. Have you ever sensed it, experienced it? Dang. Number one, and this is something that comes up constantly in the Scriptures, but temptation. Don't underplay the importance of Satan's role in leading people astray and enticing them. Remember, you cannot blame Satan for the temptation. You can only blame him for trying to push you over the edge of what you already wanted to do. Remember that from last time we talked about temptation? But he will do that. In fact, this is how dangerous he is. You all know the Apostle Paul, powerful man of God, powerful preaching, powerful miracles, powerful man. And you'd think that anything Paul touched turned to gold, right? Well, he was very aware of the exact thing we're talking about. And here's what he wrote to the Thessalonians. He had to leave the Thessalonian Christians behind. He started the church there. He had to leave them behind. And he said, I had to write and find out what's going on with you because I feared that after I left you, the tempter may have tempted you and all my efforts would have been useless. In other words, Paul was aware of the fact that, yes, he established a church, they received the gospel, they received the Holy Spirit, and when Paul left, he knew in the back of his mind the enemy's not done with them. And what he worried about was that when he was not there, that the enemy had his way with those new Christians, and it was all lost. I was afraid that the tempter tempted you and that all of my efforts were useless. Is this not a real danger? Like, if you love Christ and his people, this has to be on your heart. My brothers and sisters are in constant attack. And most of the time we're unaware of it because he's so subtle. Don't you sometimes wish Satan came to you with a temptation and there was a document labeled temptation number 874? And he said, here's what God says, here's what I'm saying, make your choice. Do you wish he was that clear with it? Rebel against God or listen to God? I wish that was the choice given. It's not. It's subtle. It's like in the garden. Are you sure that's what God said? Well, doesn't it look lovely to eat? You're going to be smart when you're done. Right? So we need to be aware of this, not just for ourselves, but for our brothers and our sisters. This is why the language is important. Deliver us. Right? Deliver us from the evil one. Because he's good at what he does. Brothers and sisters, have you come to the realization yet that your enemy, the devil, and all of his forces are super smart? Have you seen that? If you think they're dummies, man, pack it up. Whether you're fighting crime, you're fighting terrorists, whatever, think on military terms or police terms, whatever you're fighting, if you underestimate the intelligence of your enemy, is this good news? They're going to outwit you every step of the way. I want you to know something about your enemy. He is clever. And how long has he been doing his thing? Any idea? I don't know exactly either, but it's been millennia. Hey, you do something for millennia and see how good you get. How well does he know people? Not as well as God, but you watch human beings for 7,000-ish more years. Will you not start to learn how they tick? How to manipulate? How to fool? This is who we're dealing with, brothers and sisters. Again, not fear. This is not about being afraid. It's about being aware. Right? We've got to know that the person we're up against here is smarter than we are. Anybody afraid to admit that? Okay, is Satan not smarter than you are? He's smarter than I am. I'll tell you that right now. But who is he not smarter than? You got it. That's why we're asking Father. Okay, anyway, he throws out there these lies, these false truths, and he destroys people's lives. Absolutely destroys them. And here's the real danger for churches. It is really unlikely that First Church of Christ will ever just, as a whole community, say, this Jesus thing is actually a joke after all. We're done with the Jesus thing. Is that really a huge danger for us? Nah. I don't fear that we're going to turn atheists or turn Buddhists or turn Muslim out of the blue. That's not a real danger that I see. But you know what is a danger for us? Always, for every church, all the time? That we will accept a half version of the real thing. Amen? Have you heard of the different gospels out there? Prosperity gospel. Actually, that one's the main one that comes up a lot. But there's different gospels that you can follow. The gospel of law instead of grace. You got to earn it. You better be good. God's going to get you. That's a different gospel too. It's all about laws and legalism and earning your way through good behavior. False gospels. Now, Okay, we're not going to turn to some random religion tomorrow, but you know what is always tempting us? To let the enemy's lies take the good thing that we have in Christ's gospel and change it just a shade to where it'll still kill us, but it tastes good going down. Isn't that right? Look, how much poison does it take to put into water to have its effect? Very little. 99% water, 1% poison, and it's good enough. That's our danger. We got to be aware of that. How about this? Jesus told a parable, and he talked about how the word goes out and it lands in people's hearts, but he says that there was this bird in the parable. There's a bird that comes and snatches the seed up. And when he explained his parable, he said, that's the evil one right there. He comes and he snatches the word away from people so it doesn't even have a chance to change their life. Do you know that the devil's doing that? You hear the gospel, and I'm not giving him omnipotent or omnipresent powers. I'm not just saying it's him. It's his forces. It's his army. They come along and they whisper in your ear, well, that's silly. It can't be that simple. That doesn't sound like an intelligent person could believe these things. You've never seen him. How can you be sure he's real? Like all these things. He'll snatch the word of God's saving power away from you so that you don't even give it a second thought. He's doing this stuff. Jesus said so. I believe my master. And then lastly, I just want to mention this. He brings into our lives both physical and spiritual oppression. There was a woman that Jesus had in synagogue when he was there in synagogue, and she was bent over like this. Her body was bent, fixed in this crippled state. And it was the Sabbath, so they were quite upset when he healed her. Imagine that. But what he said about her was, this woman has been under the devil's oppression for 12 years. And you're upset that it's the wrong day to heal her. She's waited long enough. But he said that was the enemy oppressing this woman. And we're so sophisticated now that we think anything physical's got only a physical answer, only a physical explanation. I believe there are physical issues, obviously, but do you think that spirit and physical are so separate? That a spiritual power like Satan cannot manipulate physical things? That's clear from our master. If we're not aware of this, we may never get to the root of some of the physical issues. Didn't Don just read about this? This woman had sickness in her body because of stress. That's a spirit thing, right? Physical manifestation. Be aware of this, that's all. Don't be afraid of it. Be aware of it. Be alert. Be sober-minded. If you have a persistent sickness and the doctors don't understand it, I'm not saying you sinned or anything. Just at least consider the possibility. Is there something spiritual happening here that I've ignored because the doctors never mentioned spiritual things? Probably. But my master mentioned it. I got to listen to his voice. So, as much as we have to be aware of the real and present danger of the enemy, this is the good news. This is why Jesus said to pray. Look, if you were just stuck facing this enemy on your own, Jesus wouldn't say pray. He'd be like, good luck to you. Nice knowing you, right? But he says, pray. Pray to your Father who's in the heavens. That means he's in charge. And you ask him to rescue you from the evil one. You ask him. You don't demand it. You don't manipulate it. You don't bargain. Anybody ever tempted to bargain? Like God needs us to convince him to love us, right? This is so weird. Our psychology about God is a little kooky. But if you do this for me, I promise I'll go to church more. What? No, we ask him. That's all. Why? Because we trust him. That's why. We know him well enough as his child to know that he loves us and he's here right now. He is real and he is present. Amen? Let's try it again. Let's wake up. He is real and he is present. Amen? Look, if that's not true, don't pray. Don't ask him to deliver you. Ask some action hero. Ask some superhero. They're just as real and present, apparently. No. If God our Father is real and he is present with us through the Holy Spirit, you call out to him and you know something's going to happen. He's going to show up, and he's going to, maybe in the spiritual realm, he is rousing himself from his temple, from his throne, and he is coming with fire out of his mouth, and he's coming in the dark clouds of the sky, and he is unleashing his spiritual lightning to scatter your spiritual enemy. Read Psalm Psalm 18 again and again and again. Because that image, when I pray, has so many times inspired me to trust Father to save me. Because I can picture his fierceness against my enemy. My enemy is a fierce monster. Like, he's a roaring lion. He's in the book of Revelation. Our enemy is called the ancient serpent, a red dragon. Dragon? Like, not a kimono either. Like, we're talking about a real, ancient, big, terrifying dragon. And guess what happens to the dragon when Jesus shows up? That's right. He's a terrifying foe, but my Father, my Master Jesus, they are far more terrifying still to the wicked one. Do you remember when Jesus was facing off against demons who had possessed human beings, taken possession of their bodies? It's not theirs. They stole that body. God made that body. That's God's body, but they stole it. They took possession of a person. And Jesus is walking around doing his kingdom power thing, releasing those oppressed by the devil, Peter said. And do you know what demons would do when they saw Jesus from a distance? Do you know? You got to know this. Come on. Because when you're praying for deliverance, you've got to have this stuff in your head. What did the demon-possessed people do when they saw Jesus at a distance? And they'd fall down. Now, if you're going to fall down at someone's feet, that tells you something. And then when they spoke, you know what they did? They begged. Even a man who was filled with a legion of demons. Legion. That's a lot. That's a lot of demons in one guy. All of these demons and all their power. He was so powerful because of the demonic presence. He could tear chains off. He was uncontrollable humanly. But when this man, full of all these powerful demons, is in front of Jesus, all they can do is beg. Are you going to torture us before the appointed time? Where? I know you're going to throw us out. Will you at least let us go into the pigs? Where? You see? Who's terrifying in this scenario? Up until Jesus showed up, the demons were the terrifying ones. When Jesus shows up, who's terrifying now? You know, if you're on the schoolyard and you got a bully, big, burly bully, unstoppable, biggest kid in class, no one can stand against him. All right, look, if you're smart, you just might stay out of the guy's way if you're a little guy. Well, I was a little guy. But if your dad shows up on campus, can't you walk a little more proudly by the bully in the hallway? Because what's he going to do when daddy's next to me? You want to try something? Right? No. Don't be arrogant towards the enemy, by the way. We're warned about that. But listen, if God is real and present, he's going to save you. Do you see that? Do you believe that? Because you're going to face a spiritual attack and you won't know what to do. Our church is presently under spiritual attack. I wish I could go into more detail. I will as time goes on. But just know this, and I'm asking you to pray what Jesus said to pray for our church, because there are real people in our church facing real spiritual attack right now. And if you weren't told, you don't know. How can you call in for reinforcements if you're not aware of the attack? Just know this, please. For now, take this much. You need to pray for your church family. Your leaders, your brothers and sisters, there's real attack happening. And here's the thing. If he's attacking the people of the church, it's because he knows the church is his greatest threat in what he's doing. Do you believe that? I don't have time to go through all this, but I just want to say, how does God rescue us? He tells us the truth so the lies don't work. He gives us the spiritual armor that we heard about earlier. Read Ephesians 6. Put the stuff on. He gives you shepherds over the flock to watch and protect you. Acts chapter 20. Check it out. He gives you awareness of the devil's schemes. And I love this. Paul said, we are not unaware of his schemes. We know what he's up to. You know, you don't get arrogant with the devil, but you can at least do this. I know what you're up to. You know, we can know his schemes. We can be aware of this because God shows it to us. He sends his Holy Spirit to empower you, and he sends his holy angels to fight for you in a field of battle you aren't even seeing. His angels are part of this salvation he offers you. So let me just wrap it up this way. Look, never be arrogant with the enemy. Never. But be confident. The reason you can't be arrogant is not you. What are you going to do? He's older, faster, wiser. You know, he's got you outmatched in every way the enemy does. So you don't get arrogant with the enemy, ever. But you can be confident. Because there's someone behind you, before you, around you, and inside you who has proven to the enemy, he's whooped. He cast Satan out of heaven. He conquered him when he raised his son from the dead. Every day he is changing people's hearts that used to be enslaved to Satan's lies. God is proving he can beat Satan. So I want you to know he can beat Satan in your life. A temptation that will not stop hounding you. You call out to Father, you trust him and obey him. He will beat Satan for you. There's a phrase, and I'm going to end here because I could keep talking all day. I get so excited about this. But listen, there's a phrase in the book of Romans. It's so powerful. You need to hear this. God will soon crush Satan under your feet. Like if he said crush Satan under his feet, I'm like, yeah, take him. Well, listen. God will soon crush Satan under your feet. Because he will train your hands for battle. He will train you how to face the enemy in his power, in his way. And you don't have to be cowering in a corner. You stand confidently in the midst of the storm like David. You cry out to the one who sits on the throne and watch and wait as the storm clouds ride in and he scatters the enemy. Your Father loves you too much to let you go on your own. Do you see it? It's my boy in there. That's my girl you're attacking. Hands off. Mama Day and Father Day play coming up. Mamas and fathers, do you not know this? The mama bear? You know who the original mama bear is? Papa Bear. He's the original. So when someone's attacking his kids, you watch out. Hold my jacket. Okay? You picture God saying that. Hold my jacket. I'm going to fight for my kids. That's why you can pray. Father in the heavens. And don't say this like, Father in the heavens, deliver us from the evil. No, if you really are praying, you should say, Father, save us from the evil one. He's here. He's attacking. We see it. We feel it. Father. You don't call for help. 911. Hey, so pretty sure there's a guy with an axe at my door. Wondered if you could make a visit, whenever you're available. No. You listen to 911 calls as, slow down, slow down. That's our prayer, okay? That means we know what's going on. We understand what's at stake. Father in the heavens, deliver us from the evil one. He's here and he's real, but oh Father, you are here and you are real. And you will save us because we are before anything in our lives, disciples of Jesus Christ.